Hello and welcome to Practical Intuition with Kay. I almost called it We Turned Out Okay. It did used to be called that once upon a time ago, but that was like, quite a few episodes ago now. Hello and welcome to Practical Intuition with Kay. This is the show where we are always working to help you come from your heart, consult yourself, trust yourself in all things, and not be thrown off by, external forces. That's a good way to say it. Welcome, welcome. This is episode 404. I am Kay. I am a coach. I'm an artist. I am an adventurer. And I'm really excited. Today is the fifth and final part of a series I've done taking you into my trip. In May of 2023, I walked across the north of England on what's called the Coast to Coast Path. That was the trip itself is 192 miles of hiking, and I did 160 of that in 20 days, 17 of which I hiked. And I hiked the last 11 days in a row. So like pretty exciting, especially for me. If you've listened before, you might, or if you know me, you might know that a dozen years ago, I needed a wheelchair to go more than a few steps. So in fact, one interesting thing that happened on the trek, just almost at the very end, so 2 days before the end, I started to get what I've since learned was actually a tendon problem. At the time, it felt like something had gone very, very wrong in my boot, and it had, but because what I was doing was I was over tightening my boot, and so the tendons in my like toes and foot were sort of reacting to that by just causing a lot of pain. There was some swelling in like just sort of above the ball of my foot. It was such a strange feeling, and I associate that with tendons. I don't know what all is there, but like massage helps it. And um, there like I thought I'd broken my foot. I mean, I really did. And I remember coming into the town of Glaisdale on that day. I like could not keep up any pacing. There was no plan. I was legitimately not sure how I was going to get the half a mile through this village or quarter mile through this village, because it was all on a downhill. Like it was this steep down to get to the inn. And that was where this was at its worst. Like what was happening was my foot was sort of butting up against the front of the boot in such a way that it was causing all kind of pain, and I over tightened the boot. Anyway, the reason that I'm bringing that up is because well, to tell you the truth, I've completely forgotten the reason that I was bringing that up, except that it's quite an interesting story because it did not stop me. Oh, I remember why. Yes. So that night I was legitimately not sure if I was going to be able to go the next day. Like I was really worrying about the future. And I remember Coach Andrew. He's my guest in episode 399. He is someone who really was important in me crossing this trail and being able to do it with joy and in a way that really worked for me. I remember him saying there's a huge difference between like a bruised foot and not being able to do this. Like it's all in your thoughts. And at the time I was like, well, I mean, I don't even like seriously do not know if I'm going to be able to put on a boot tomorrow. And that night, a very dear friend of mine got a memory. You know how phones give memories now? So this was from 11 years ago. And it was a picture of our pedicured toes, hers and mine, from a visit that we took to Newport, Rhode Island. And what she said was, do you remember this day? This is the day that I pushed you in your wheelchair through the streets of Newport, Rhode Island, so that we could get these pedicures. And I remember having the feeling of like, you know what? Like I've already walked. Like it is going to be too bad. It's going to be a bummer if I can't make it the last 20 miles of this 160-mile walk. But like it really brought me back to my place of center to remember that 20 years ago, I'm sorry, 20 years ago, 11 years ago, I was in a wheelchair. Like I could not go more than a few steps without a wheelchair. And actually, so 11 years ago, I was on the mend. I'd met Gonzalo, the physical therapist who like worked on me and took the pain away. And then the game became like, how do we get strength back into these legs that are emaciated to the point where like muscles that should be convex are concave. But I still was really, really weak in my legs. I mean, I was not able to, maybe I could go, I don't know, across my house or something, but I wasn't able to walk like a typical person, right? And so going from needing a wheelchair 11 years ago to being on like the penultimate day of a 160-mile walk, like it really put it in perspective for me. And that was frankly what gave me the courage to like, I was like, I can try this. I can, tomorrow is a day where I can call a cab if I need to. And boy, the next day it hurt. Like I was, especially coming down, doing so. Ascending, I would be much better, but then coming down, I still had no idea what was causing this. It isn't wasn't. I was blaming the hiking boots. I was going to return them when I got home, and I use these hiking boots like every day because now I understand what the challenge was and is. And so that day, I remember sort of engineering like um, ways to take the pressure off of this foot with what's called moleskin, which is like a sort of sticky, fuzzy, like it's adhesive, like compressed fuzz. It helps, it takes the pressure off of things. So I made a little donut shape out of many layers of that and put it on the part of this boot that was digging into my foot. I never once thought about loosening up the boot. I think this is so interesting. And I was crying. Like there was one point, there was an hour or so at the beginning of this walk, a couple hours maybe, where I was like sitting on the side of a road, literally sobbing because I was in so much pain and just wondering like, how am I going to keep going? Like, what should I do here? And I remember consulting the universe and saying like, if the universe was going to handle this, like, what would they do? And you know, so retrofitting my boot to make it with the moleskin and just trying a few more steps and trying a few more steps. And fortunately, there was a bit of a flat, and I was in a town or a village so that I knew if I needed to, I could call mountain rescue or I could call a cab. I was safe in that sense. Like I wouldn't, it wasn't about being rescued. It was about like, I can choose to stop this whenever I want. And a couple things happened. One was things started to feel a little bit better. Maybe it went from an 8 or a 9 on the pain scale to like it went from the most unbearable pain where I couldn't use my leg basically. I'm using a hiking pole now as a cane to maybe a 4 or 5. And I'm in this town and I turned where I was. What would happen is I turned right onto, I was following the coast to coast path. So I turned onto it was a very flat road. So for this maybe next mile or so, there was a lot of flat, not a lot of elevation or descent, which was also really, really helpful. And I realized that I was on something called a toll road, a really old-fashioned toll road. And the universe gave me someone who lives in one of these along the toll road. Occasionally, there are cottages where the toll taker used to live. And so what would happen is you would come up to these if you were in a carriage or a coach or on a horse or something like that, and these roads were like maintained really well, and they were good road, like really really good road. And so for the privilege of using them, you would pay a toll. And like I've read about these in books so often. Like in fact, one of my favorite Georgette Heyer novels. She was this author who used to write about Regency England and just very not silly, but really fun love stories. And there was one that in which like you spend half the novel in a toll taker's cottage, like because that's where the people who are involved in this end up. And I just I was like, I'm standing in front of an actual toll taker's cottage, like on a toll road, speaking to the woman who lives here now. Like, how amazing is this? And it really brought me back to the idea that, like, what I pay attention to, what I focus on is uh, what grows. And at that point, yes, my foot still hurt. I mean, it never stopped hurting the whole time coming home. I would get off the trail and be like, is it broken? Maybe. Like, it was really, really, really painful. But I was able to set that aside. And instead, there were these incredible miracles happening. And so I remember making it that day to my next destination. And then by the following day, which was my last day, it had gotten a lot better. It was wicked bruised. I mean, it was like, one of the blessings was that my friend Victoria had an arnica gel for me, and I was able to use arnica gel, and that seemed to help a little bit. A lot of, like, it was rest, ice, massage, all the things that they tell you. I was able to take on my second to last day. I was able to take a long hot bath, and that was really, really helpful. Like, the things that help tendons are the things that helped this, which is kind of why I think it must have been a tendon challenge. And like, it's interesting to bring this into the beginning of this episode, this particular story, because I want to talk today about how I view safety now as a person who has done a trek like this. And this has been something that's been evolving for me in the last couple of weeks. Like I said, I think I said this last time, that like the learning doesn't stop, like it continues in such a really cool way. And so I am continuing to learn. And I'm just making sure that this isn't, yes, good. It is in fact recording. It does in fact hear me. Awesome. Very cool. My little recorder, I want to make sure that it was working well. Um, I have been working with someone who I'm going to keep as anonymous as I possibly can, because I want to share about this, and they may or may not want me to. So I really want to make sure that this stays anonymous. But I've been working with someone recently who is the founder and CEO of a beautiful, beautiful company. And the staff that they have has been wishing that this founder and CEO, could teach them, the staff, what this person innately does in terms of helping clients feel safe and helping clients feel seen and heard. And this person has the capacity to take like a full-on tantruming person and make them feel so safe that they can become calm and start to work on the solutions for the problems that they're encountering. Like, it's miraculous, it's beautiful. And this person knew that, and at the same time was like, but I don't know how to teach it to my staff, and boy, do they want to learn. They want to know this. And so we got to talking about, like, I remember asking, like, has it always been like this, or what were you like as a child, or something like that. And what they shared was that as a child, out in the world, they always loved to talk to people. Like, they would just, people were very drawn to them because of the joy and love that kind of naturally came from them. And so much so that their parents were like, listen, you can't talk to strangers. Like this is not safe. You've got to stop this. And yet they just loved. Like, their entire default mechanism was, strangers are simply friends I have not yet met. And that for them was at the very basis of how they are now, what they now bring into their working life and into their whole life. But since we were talking about work, like, that's where this came from. And it really kind of where we got to, or where this person, the inspiration for this person was that, or one inspiration, as I saw it, was that in order to feel safe, they would naturally want to engage people around them. because that was helping this other person feel safe, and thus they also felt safer. And um it really sparked some inspiration for me about why we do what we do as human beings, right? Like, we are social creatures, and um we seek warmth and love and kindness, and when we're given that, we feel safe. Like, if you think about, why do we hug each other? Right? Why is that a human instinct, to give comfort through touch? um and like, it really is an intuition kind of a thing. It's a body based thing. I remember coming home from the Coast to Coast Path, and like lying in bed next to my husband, who I hadn't seen for 3 weeks, right? And we're just sort of, just the privilege of being able to sleep next to your honey. And I remember having he was just asleep next to me, and I was lying there just feeling the connection of our hearts, like, just loving that this person, who I love so much, also loves me, and here we are together, and our hearts are beating together. And um what an incredible feeling of safety that is, right? And so this was one of the things that kind of really sparked my learning on this. Like, I started to think on, like, how do I feel safe? This is really similar to this person that I was working with. This is really one way. I had shared, I think in episode 400 of the show, I shared about being, while I was on the trip, I got to ride a domed bus, like a double-decker domed bus. It was the most coolest thing ever. That, like, oh my God, I love this bus so much. On the way up to Keswick, on like it was just a bus route between two towns. And on the way up to the town of Keswick, I had the whole top to myself. I was in the dome all by myself, right up at, like, my nose pressed up against the dome, basically. And while I was in Keswick, waiting, the bus sort of was on its route, right? A couple of guys got on, and they sat upstairs, but they sat in back. But the dome didn't extend that far. And what was happening to them was they were getting thwacked with, like, branches and stuff. So they came and they sat as close as they possibly could to me without being in the same seat. They were right across from me. I'm hearing bottles clinking. At one point, one of them pulled out a bottle of beer and was drinking it. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I in for here? And I did feel very unsafe. I realized in retrospect what I did about that. Like, I wouldn't have said, oh no, I don't feel safe. What I was saying to myself was like, I don't remember saying anything. I just turned and engaged. I just connected with these folks and discovered how amazing they were and how wonderful they are. One of them, like, in our conversation, I discovered that one of them has a sister who lives in the town next door to me, which I was like, how is that possible? Like, what gifts the universe gives. And they were just two guys taking a weekend together. They worked together. They were coworkers, and they're spending the weekend in the Lake District together and doing it how is fun for them. And, like, the safety that I felt in interacting with them 100% came from me turning to them, engaging them, talking with them, asking questions, like, just from a genuinely curious place. If I had reacted with suspicion, if I had, I don't know, hunched over in my seat or something like that, which would definitely, I think there are folks in the world whose instinct is to, like, or whose conditioning is, and there are times I've totally felt like this. This isn't a thing about, this isn't judgmental. It's something I've observed, is that, like, I mean, in fact, when I've relayed this story to people, sometimes what I'll hear is like, oh my God, I would not have done that. I would have been so suspicious and so frustrated and, felt so helpless. And it's like, those are not safe feelings. Right. And so I think in some ways I've I'm back to a person who, there was definitely, especially when my kids were little, I can remember, or even when Jay wasn't born yet, but when Max was like a toddler or something, I'd be at a playground, and if there was a kid who was like 10 or something, who was perceived to me by being an older kid, who was like running around on the playground or making noise or doing something that felt unsafe to me, I'd be like, my instinct would be to protect my son. And I didn't feel like he was going to be safe. And like, as he got to be 10 and as his brother got to be 10, I started to realize like, oh yeah, this is the other side of that. Like, these are just kids. There's no, malice in them. And unless I am in that energy and that's what I'm looking for, because everybody has both, right? So like feeling safe meant feeling like I could be in a good energy, a positive energy, know with certainty that the folks around me are good people, and just trusting evidence over thoughts, which that's one of the lessons that I learned on this trip. That was something that was said to me by my coach. One night we were having a message conversation about cows because I'd been taught to fear cows. Um, mothers and babies, mothers protecting babies, and like, you don't want to provoke them, you don't want to go near them, you don't want to challenge them. There was a day on my walk that like was half a mile or a quarter mile anyway, and perhaps even longer when I look back at the picture. It's like, ooh. Where there were like 100 mamas and babies, and they were on the path. Like there was no way for me to go around them, and I was terrified. And if I looked back, when I was invited to look back, what I realized was that the calves were curious, the mamas were calm. It was all good. I was the one who was injecting fear and worry and feelings of non-safety into that. And um, trusting evidence over thoughts and giving good energy, like a positive feeling that in my body, that was the solution for that. So like after that, after I sort of incorporated that lesson, I realized like I was having a much, much better time with the cows. Like I could be close to them. I wasn't fearful. I was instead very joyful. Um, and that was a really, really important lesson to learn. Uh, and then like that has sort of led to this place. So all of these ideas are sort of coming together for me. Um, in speaking with this person, that was really enlightening in terms of like, how do we help someone feel safe and seen? We can come from a place of having that just intuition that they are um, worthy, and being respectful of them, and just giving them the space to feel seen. A lot of times what it really comes down to is like asking a question from a curious place, not from a subjective place, like with no agenda, asking a question that is just based on curiosity and listening to the answer, like really um, paying attention to what they're saying. And then even if we can reflect that back to them, that is a way of helping them feel really, really seen. And when somebody feels very safe, when they're sitting across from someone who gets them and understands, and doesn't have any judgment about what they're hearing, right? Like that all of this comes into that. And so safety becomes about engaging from a good and positive energy. And sort of around the same time that I was learning that, like this is pretty recently, um, on my daily walk, my daily hike, really, what I've been noticing is a preponderance of bees and wasps, some of which are like 2 inches long. I mean, like, and big, big, big. Like one time I remember, you know, walking. I have this memory of coming onto a path where they live, and basically the thought that came into my head was, oh my gosh, this place is infested with bees and wasps. And then I was like, wait a second, like let's check that language. Like, what if I changed the word infested to the word inhabited? And I said to myself, this place is inhabited by bees. Boy, did that feel so different. Like, because infest makes me think of the word fester, um, which is like makes me think of sores and yuckiness and like pain and sickness and suffering, right? But the word inhabited made me think of habit, like as in inhabit, live, live here. And I was like, oh my gosh, these creatures live here. Like I'm walking on their terrain, and to show someone respect about that, like that feels really, really important. So Um, the day before I had that insight, I was walking on this path. I was feeling, I don't think the word in like infested had come into my mind, but I was feeling really scared of the bees and the wasps. And that was the day that I actually got stung. I was multiple times. I was overlooking the Charles River at this bridge, and I was just sort of sitting there. I was going through something at the time, which I think is really a significant part of this. Like I was not in a joyful energy. I was like in a sort of unhappy place, and I'm getting stung, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and like I'm paying attention to the things in the world that feel scary, and what I pay attention to grows. And so I was feeling very unsafe that day in the woods. And when I was able to kind of reframe that and come back the next day, that was when I had this insight about like, these bees live here. These wasps live here. These pollinators, these creatures that are crucial to our food supply. And not only that, are just worthy of respect within themselves because they are fellow creatures. They live here, and it's on me to um, to help them feel safe. I'm the person stomping through their landscape, and having that insight was really cool. I had recently sort of also come across the idea that oh, I guess this is like, it's not just an idea, it's like learning. The human understanding of the workings of the heart uh, has become enhanced as we've been able to sort of see imaging of, EKGs and whatnot of like heartbeats. And um, the I thought this was really, really cool that you know how a heart goes lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. Like that's one way that you can look at it, right? Well, in that space between dub and the next lub, it's kind of a quiet place in the heart. It's like a quiet place in the beat. And you can see electromagnetically what is going on there. And when someone is feeling angry, the electromagnetic pulses are jagged. They're like jagged. Like they're sort of like these stiff peaks and valleys. It's really, really stark, and I mean, to me, aggressive looking. Like it was really interesting to see this imaging. And when a person is feeling loving, or feeling the feeling of love, they are just these smooth, rounded, calm uh, images of the electromagnetic activity in the heart. So, in other words, it makes a difference physically whether someone is feeling angry or feeling love. And I remember bringing that into this day where I was like, okay, so if I'm giving off an energy of love, that's a very different energy than the one that I was probably feeling yesterday when I was like all worried and upset. And I just like, so now I am feeling like the bees and the wasps and the pollinators are my friends. And I've started saying to them, like, hello, like, it's so good to see you, friend. And I started to realize that that felt a little different than how I would greet a dragonfly or a butterfly. And when I realized that, I thought, well, that's not cool. Like now I'm not treating them with as much respect as I treat dragonflies, damselflies, butterflies. Like, what if instead I could treat these creatures as the beautiful, friendly, living creatures that they are? And since I've done that, boy, I'll tell you, it's been a different world out on my walk. I feel safer. And when I feel safe, I am exuding an energy. I'm giving off an energy that is helping the bees feel safe. Like, and the wasps. I mean, how cool is that? Um, there are lots of different ways to feel safe. I think that's what I kind of wanted to talk about. Like having, you know, integrating my learning from doing this trek, understanding that like the energy I'm giving to the cows that's helping me see, that they're curious and calm and loving. As one fellow coast to coaster put it, these are just mamas and babies. Like they're just happy and loving, and That's cool. And so being able to kind of take that home and understand what it means to trust the evidence in front of me over the thoughts that I'm having. Um, and having that translate to like my learning from what this person I was working with. Um, I learn something every time I'm in a coaching conversation. Like I love it. It's just, it's a very symbiotic relationship. You know what I mean? Because as a coach, like uh, I feel such an equal to the person who I'm coaching. And, um, I love like what we are as fellow creatures, and I'm offering support to somebody. And the support is the creation of a space where they can understand and conceive of what is important to them, what they want to reach for, how to do it. Like, um, right? Like I think I used to think that like the people who coached me were so much better than me. And the realization that like um we're there's a really lovely equality to all of this. Like we're just fellow creatures who support each other, right? Is amazing. And that has helped me to cultivate these feelings of safety inside myself, and these feelings of like coming from my own inner guidance and intuition, and like trusting those things that take place in my body. Like intuition is felt, emotions are felt in my body. um and knowing that this is also really really valuable, useful information that very often is more important, you know, than the thoughts I'm having, because the thoughts are gonna, in my experience, sometimes they'll lead me astray because they, this is again in my experience, they seem to come from like the expectations that I think someone has, either of me or, you know, about me or something like that. And so I will, or something that's going on that I, you know, my mind is the place that's saying like, I don't want this to happen. I don't want this to come to pass. I'm anxious about this. And to be able to sort of understand where I feel that in my body takes it out of my thinking and makes it observable. And um, then I feel like I can make some progress on it. Like, and sometimes the intuition is like, dude, you just need to give yourself a minute. Like, this is hard. And being patient with yourself is going to make it, you know, so that you can just keep observing and keep being there for yourself in this way. Um, just knowing that it's hard is like, there's lots of ways of feeling safe. And I think I think that's really where I'm going to leave it. Like I'm maybe what I'm doing here is inviting you to kind of play with this idea for yourself. Um, how do you feel safe? I would really, really be interested in talking about that. Like, where do feelings of safety come from for you? Like, how do you feel safe? I am klockculp.com/contact, or the letter K at klockculp.com. Um, I really love to hear. These are the most fascinating conversations, and I love having them. So get in touch with me, please. I hope this has been helpful. This is wrapping up the learning that I've had, I guess, so far on my, you know, in the lead up to my coast to coast path trek, and then in the doing of it, and then in the kind of integrating the learning afterwards. I'm so happy and joyful that you're here with me. I hope this has been interesting, useful. If you've got questions, please, again, go to those places and let me know, because I love questions. I love talking about the human experience. And to me, that's what so many of these questions and ideas come down to. You can join me in a couple of conversations coming up. So this is dropping on October the 10th. And so a couple things happening. 4 days from now, when this drops, on October the 14th, Saturday, October the 14th, the Global Coach Community's second annual virtual retreat is happening. Karen Dent is my co-host, and we are facilitating, we're opening a space where a bunch of our fellow coaches from the global coach community, so these are people, some of the world's best coaches from all over the world, are coming together on Saturday the 14th to, I don't know, be in retreat with you. It is, there's no cost to it. There's no financial cost to it. I know that we are working on something as I'm recording this, a way for you to donate to somebody's journey if you feel the call, but you can totally attend these for free. There, I will be putting the Eventbrite, or I believe it's going to be Eventbrite link. There will be a link to the Global Coach community so you can sign up and learn more about it. The theme this year is, Are We Having Fun Yet? And Karen and I, well, this was proposed by one of the coaches who's facilitating, the wonderful Nicole Gallucci. She was episode 398 of our show, of my show, Practical Intuition, this show. And she, when we got to talking about what should the theme of this year's Global Coach Community Virtual Retreat be, she proposed, Are We Having Fun Yet? And Karen and I just felt like it was such a great theme because that's like last year's, we called it Finding Hope in Times of Challenge. And the themes were all about like, the things that everybody did were all about, their special take on finding hope in times of challenge. And that felt really important in that moment. And in this moment, the idea of having fun really feels like the idea of the moment, because like so many folks are exhausted, are depleted, are not feeling safe to, just in terms of this episode, right? And those are not conditions for fun. Like, it's really hard to have genuine fun and joy in your life if you're feeling depleted, burned out, unhappy, unsafe. And so as a group of coaches who work in our amazing communities, as we have all gotten to think on like, what does it mean? What is fun? What are the prerequisites for fun? How can we help participants have fun? Are we having fun yet? Like, that just seemed like the most perfect theme. So Nicole, thank you so much for that. And for what you will bring to this retreat, because like it's gonna be awesome. And I'm so excited for it. Like, we've been talking about this now for several months. We've been creating fun stuff around it for several months. I'm going to guess that between when I'm recording this and when it actually goes up, there's going to be at least one sort of announcement about the Global Coach Community Retreat, because I know I'm going to be wanting to share a little bit about that with you outside of like this, right now in this episode, these few minutes. So yeah, there's going to be a link in the show notes. Come to our virtual retreat. It is taking place on Saturday, October 14th, somewhere like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time on that day. And it's going to be a blast, like such fun. So come to that. I am continuing to facilitate conversations about my learning, what I learned about myself on the Coast to Coast, walking the Coast to Coast path. This month, at the end of October, I'm consulting my calendar again. These conversations are coming up, or this particular conversation on this subject is coming up on Tuesday, the 24th and Wednesday, the 25th of October. And what we are talking about is food is not my enemy. So Halloween is also coming up in a couple of weeks. And that for me, historically, was the beginning of a tremendous downslide. Like, every year I would gain 5 pounds, 10 pounds between Halloween and Christmas. And I would feel, or New Year's, and I would feel like such an unworthy person. And I would feel those feelings, and then I would run to food. And in the training to hike 160 miles across a 192-mile path, what I learned was to trust myself, to see food as a friend, to, there was even one time, and I'm going to be talking about this, where I did eat a dessert from an emotional place, which for me, that had always been like the beginning of a tremendous downside. So that happened on my trip. And what I did about it is kind of the learning, right? And like that I really would like to get into. So that is happening in just a couple of weeks from when this episode drops. Really, these conversations have been such a good time, and you know, just transformative for me. It's such fun to connect. I like doing them as conversations. The first one I did way back now in June, um, I did it as like, I wasn't seeing the other people in the Zoom room. I did it as like a presentation. And what that meant was that I only saw myself, and I was like, this isn't quite the feeling that I want. So I've changed them. So we're all in a Zoom room together. You can be on video or not. You can contribute or not. You can just be there as a listener. I want people to feel supported in being in these conversations any way that feels good. And if you want to, you can talk, like, and you can be seen literally in these Zoom rooms. It's a really safe space. Everyone who's there knows that it is that safe space. So and you get to hear about me and my learning, which is I learned a lot. And I'd love to hear your insights on things like, food and the relationship that you have with it and the relationship that you have with your body. That's why these conversations have been such fun, because there's been such connection. So I don't have a link to that direct event yet as I'm recording this, but when it drops in the show notes will be a link to this direct event, and also a link to the collection of events. So I'm choosing Eventbrite to do these, and I am doing them in Eventbrite. You can make a collection. So the collection name is, and this will be in the link, this link will be in the show notes as well. So you can sign up for future ones. I'm doing them all the way through December of 2023, is bit.ly/I learned collection. And that is all lowercase. Come and join us. It's going to be a blast. I want to share that I recently opened an art store on my website, where the art that I'm creating and have been creating is there for you to look at and purchase if you'd like. I've got some art behind me right now, if you're watching in YouTube, that is not for sale because this was a gift that I made, but it was this really fun scene on Cape Cod that I made about a year ago as this drops, actually. And like, what I've been enjoying is just sharing art. And in my art store, I get to tell stories. I get to share about why I created a piece. There's an entire section called Between the Worlds, which is like, sometimes I create art that is just so buck wild, and that's where that art is. So you can go and see it at klockculp.com/art. Oh, what fun this episode has been to create. I do feel very safe and very loved with you in this space. I'm very grateful to you for being here with me. It means a lot. I hope you've had some fun. I certainly have a lot of fun, actually. And I'm really, really wishing you well. I have a huge thanks to our producer, the man who has been helping me engineer these myself. And also he is just like, so we've got some great guest interviews coming up. And Ben, that is where you shine. Like, you take these conversations that I record and turn them into like great sounding audio. And I just am so grateful, to you for all that you do in an audio sense and in, a real life sense. Ben is not just our sound engineer here. He is the 26-time winner of the Husband of the Year Award, Benjamin Culp. Thank you so much, darling. And I have a real gratitude to you listening and watching right now. Thank you for being here with me. It's fun to be along on this ride with you. I'm sending you lots of love and joy, and I'm grateful to be here with you. Thank you so much for coming along on this ride. We will see you next time. For next time, we're reverting to our regular format. So it'll be in about a month from now. The second Tuesday of the month is how I'm doing these. And I will be back either with a guest or by myself, but likely with a guest at that point, because I've been lining up some pretty great guests. So I'm excited to bring them to you. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time. Bye.